Hello everyone and welcome to this complete Python programming tutorial for beginners. This video is a 2.5 free preview from our Learn to Code with Python 3 course on Udemy. If you enjoy the tutorials, feel free to check out the complete course. I will include a link in the description of this video. Tutorials like this one are made possible by the team over at get.tech. Not only do they support channels such as mine, but they also sponsor tech conferences all over the world. I recently acquired jtdigital.tech to host my course marketplace. If you would like to secure a .tech domain for your project, business, or event, you can use coupon code JDTech to get 90% off on 1- and 5-year domains. You will also receive a free 1-year domain registration when you purchase a course bundle on my website. The Learn to Code course bundle includes 8 courses covering some of the most in-demand development skills. I will include timestamps in the description of this video as well as links to additional resources. So without further ado, let's get started.
Hello everybody and welcome to this online Python programming course. Now before we begin with the actual coding, let us talk about a few stuff such as for who is this course and what we will be doing in this course. First of all, what we are going to learn in this course is Python 3. Now let's get that out of the way right away. The reason why we are using Python 3 is because it is 2019 today, and basically next year the Python 2 will be going out of date. Basically it will not be in usage anymore. Therefore what we want to do is we want to learn a Python 3 programming, which is similar to Python 2. If you had any experience before with the Python 2, the syntax is rather similar except in some functions and some different things that we're going to cover, of course. But most of the time it is rather similar. We're going to use Python 3, as I said, because that is something that is going to be used next year. Basically every Python 2 platform will have to update itself to the Python 3, and therefore we are going to download Python 3. But more about that in the next lecture. First of all, let us talk about for who is this course. Well, for example, if you're a student and you want to learn some Python programming, this will be a perfect course for you, because we're going to cover everything from the very beginnings of Python programming to some more advanced stuff later on. Now, nothing really too advanced, because this course is mostly aimed towards the beginners. We're going to cover everything from basics in great details, so you can understand Python programming at a whole nother level. Now, of course, even if you want to make this your career and become a Python developer or basically web developer with Python, you can take this course and you will learn a lot from it. Now, we know that there are a lot of subjects covering Python, such as web developing, scripting, networking in Python, writing simple programs, writing something that will automate different tasks, and so on and so on. We will cover all of these things. But first of all, we will be downloading the Python 3 for our Windows 10 machine and also for the Ubuntu and Mac OS. Now, I will show you how to download for the Ubuntu and Mac OS, or I will show you the commands that you will use to download. But we will be mostly coding in the Windows 10 environment. As you can see right here, I have a virtual machine, Ubuntu virtual machine, which we are going to probably use later on for something, such as, for example, networking, where we are going to need 2 machines to communicate with one another. But as I said before, we are mostly going to use the Windows 10 environment. Now, in the process of installation of Python 3, I will show you on all 3 platforms how you can download Python and how you can start it up. So that will be about it for this introductory video. Nothing really more to say right here. Let us get right into programming, and in the next lecture I will explain a little bit about Python, what that is, and we are going to also download Python 3 for our Windows 10 environment. Hope you enjoyed this first lecture, and I hope I see you in the next tutorial. Bye! Hello everybody and welcome back to our second tutorial, and right now let us talk a little bit about Python before we actually download it. Now, first of all, what is Python? For those of you that are absolute beginners, Python is a programming language. Well, most likely all of you actually knew that, but Python is a high-level programming language, which basically means that it is rather easy and you can actually write programs rather faster than in some other different languages. Such as, for example, if you want to compare C language and Python language, something that will take around 10 pages, or basically 10 pages of code to write in C will take about 1 or 2 pages in Python. It is a programming language used when you need something done really fast. It is also a slower language than C, for example, because it is a high-level language. It is more far away to the processor, as we can say so, and therefore it is not as fast as different programming languages that are low-level, such as C or assembly or basically any other low-level programming language. Now, the Python is also known as the scripting language. Well, basically, what Python allows you to do is actually just write simple scripts that will do simple tasks for you. Therefore, it is called scripting language. Now, even in Python, there is something called idle, which is basically looks similar to a command shell. And what you can do there is just give simple instructions to Python and there test your programs. But we will talk more about that later on once we download the actual Python. And by the way, the Python 3, of course, can be downloaded for free. As I said, I will show both on Linux and Windows. And as I said in the previous video, there are two versions of Python, Python 2 and Python 3. We are going to use Python 3, the newest version. Now, of course, if there is a newer version of Python available, once you actually watch this course, whether it is in 2019 or some other year, feel free to download the newest version. I believe everything will work the same. So, what is Python even used for? Well, Python, professionally, you can use it. It is basically great for the backend web development. You can analyze data, parse data. For example, when you have a huge pile of data, you can use some different libraries such as regex in order to extract some of the things that you need from that certain pile of data. Now, that is just some of the use for Python. It is also starting to have its appearance in artificial intelligence and scientific computing. Now, many developers also use Python to build productivity tools, different games, desktop apps, and basically Python 3 is rather spreaded language, if you can say so. You will find a bunch of tutorials online for it. It is nothing really that unknown. There are plenty of resources to help you learn Python 3. It is also widely used on the server side, and it is, as I said, widely used for scripting. Now, this includes basically various testing, building, deployment, monitoring frameworks, monitoring scientific apps, and just writing some quick scripts, as we said before. Now, Python is also widely used as an embedded language. Now, one thing that you might actually be asking is whether you need something to start Python programming. Well, we said before it is free to download, so that is something out of the way. You don't need any other knowledge. I will basically begin from the beginning, from the basics themselves, and we will then build up our knowledge to more intermediate and later more advanced stuff. So, no is the answer. You do not need any Python programming knowledge or experience or any other programming experience. If this is a first programming language that you encounter, feel free to enjoy this course. We will explain everything in great details, so nothing to worry about there. So let us just end this real quick, and in the next video we are finally going to download Python 3 and see how it works. So hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I hope I see you in the next one. Bye! Hello everybody, and welcome back to this tutorial. And right now let us see how we can download Python for Windows. Now we have to actually visit a certain link, so open up your Google Chrome, Firefox, Internet Explorer, or whatever search engine you are using, and we're going to navigate to the python.org/downloads. So go up right up here, http python.org/downloads, and then add another slash at the end of this link. Press here enter. Now once again this will lead us to a page where we can download different versions of Python. It will show us right here, as we can see, that the latest version of Python currently is Python 3.7.3. As I said before, if you have a newer version, feel free to download that one, as long as it is a Python 3 version and not Python 2. We can see the release dates right here and different versions. This is ours that we are going to download, released on the March 25th, 2019. Now, you might be asking whether you are going to download a 32-bit or 64-bit version, but we're going to get into that just in a second. Once you actually check all of these things out, and you can read these licenses, sources if you want to, nothing really important right here. And right here, right upper there, you can read looking for Python with a different OS. We want to click Python for Windows. And right here, we're going to have a different versions for Python 3.7.3. Now note this statement right here that says Python 3.7.3 cannot be used on Windows XP or earlier. So if you are using Windows XP, which I highly doubt, it is 2019, nobody is using XP anymore. But if you are, you're going to have to upgrade or download a different version of Python, since this one won't work on Windows XP. Now you can see also these different things right here, such as stable releases and pre-releases. Now pre-releases are basically, as you can see, Python 3.8.0, which is basically a release that hasn't really been released yet as a stable release, so it is something still in progress of working. So what we want to do is we want to download a stable release, because we want our Python to work perfectly. And you can have right here different versions that you want to download, such as the x86 and x86-64. Now the x86 is 32-bit and the 64 is the 64-bit. Now in order to check whether your PC is 32-bit and or 64-bit, so you can know which one you can download, you can go right here. So just open up your search bar in the actual Windows 10. You can just type here start, oh, pardon me, not start. We open start, we want to type control panel. So control panel, open your control panel right here. It will lead you to your settings. You want to go and navigate to the system and security settings. And right here you want to find, let me just see where it is. Okay, so system settings, right here. And right here, you can just under the system type check out whether your operating system is, or whether your processor is 32 or 64-bit. And you can see mine is currently 64-bit, so I will be downloading the 64-bit version. So let us close this, and the 64-bit version would be this one, so Windows x86-64 executable installer. Click on it. It will start downloading. As we can see, it is 25 megabytes long, or big, should I say. And right here, we have that version right here. Since I already did download it, you can see it is the same name. So all you want to do is run your executable installer program. You can see right here, it opens a window, install Python 3. We want to just click on install now. It will ask for the administrator password, which I don't have, so I will just click here yes. And it will start installing or setting up our Python 3 for us. And basically all you want to do is follow the actual process of installation. And if you want to later on, you can add the Python 3 to the path so you can run it from anywhere you like. Now this shouldn't take too long to install. Basically it is right now installing and downloading all the additional libraries that it needs in order to be able to run. And what we are going to do afterwards in the next video is I will show you a few commands that you can run in order to install Python 3 for the Ubuntu. Now those of you who are using Ubuntu probably already know that any Linux type of system basically already comes with Python and Python 3, but we want to install some different usable things, or useful things should I say, such as pip for Python, installing different modules, libraries, idle, and basically the Python 3 interpreter. So I will just leave this to finish, and I will get back to you as soon as this has finished. Okay, so right here we are getting towards the end of the actual setup. It shouldn't take more than a few seconds more to finish this. It took rather a while, I mean not a while, it took around 2 to 3 minutes to finish this, which is not that long, but I actually thought it would finish a little bit faster. But here we can see everything has finished, and I hope that soon we will get prompted the finish button, which we can click and then run the Python 3. So you can see the last thing it installed is the Python 3 pip bootstrap 64-bit. Let me just move this right here. This installation file, right after you actually finish installing Python 3, you can just delete. There is no need to keep it right here, but if you want to, you can just leave it right there. So right here we can have setup was successful, special thanks to, and then Mark Hammond. Okay, so nothing really important right here. disable path length limit, change your machine configuration to allow programs including Python to bypass the 260 characters max path limitation. Now this is not really anything important to us, but if you want to, you can just click it. What this means is basically the path is the actual environment in Windows where you can actually run the program from any directory you want. So for example, if you want to run Audacity, right here, this program on my desktop, from any other directory that isn't a desktop directory, you can add it. You can add the executable of this program to the actual path, and it will be able to run it from anywhere. But more about that later on. Right now, just click here, close, and we have Python 3 installed. Now, in order to check that out, you can just type here idle, and you can see right here I have a bunch of different versions of Python 3. Right here, we are interested in Python 3.7, 64-bit. And if you open the idle, it will open up the Python 3 interpreter, which we are going to talk about more later on. As we can see, the version is 3.7.3, which is the version that we downloaded. So more about that later on. What I'm going to show in the next video is for the Ubuntu and the Mac OS users, how to download Python and how to run it. And for those of you who are running this on Windows, you can just skip the next tutorial and get straight into the idle demonstration. So, hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I hope I see you in the next one. Bye! Hello everybody, and welcome back to this tutorial. And what we're going to show right here is how you can install Python for the Ubuntu and also for the Mac OS. Now, I will not be demonstrating it on the Mac OS because I really don't have one at the moment, but I will show you what you can actually do in order to download it and just install Python 3. Now, on the Ubuntu, you can just open up your Linux machine, which I have a virtual machine right here. Let me just type in my password. You should have something similar to this. Basically, the installation on different Linuxes will be rather the same, if not exactly the same, but we are going to check out on the Ubuntu, as that is the mostly widely spread Linux distribution. So, right here, all you want to do is right-click on the desktop and open up your terminal. Now, terminal is basically the same as the command prompt in Windows. It allows you to execute system commands right here, and it also allows you to execute some of the different commands, such as apt-get install, which we will use in order to get Python 3, and some different programs as well. So, first of all, as we did in the previous video for the Windows 10, what you want to do is check out whether you're using the or whether your machine is 64-bit or 32-bit. If you just type a command uname-m in your terminal, you will get x86-64, and basically, or you will get i686, I believe, or something like that, which will indicate that you're using a 32-bit machine. So, right after you check that out, what we want to do is actually download the Python 3, and we can do that with a simple command. So just go right here, apt/get, and then install Python 3. Run this command. Whoops, we are getting a lock. So let me just enlarge this. We are going to delete these locks. Unable to require, so we need to be root. Okay, yep, sudo apt-get install Python 3. Make sure to run this as a root, so you actually have the actual privileges to execute this command. Enable to acquire the dpkg front-end lock. Okay, nothing really. Let me just enter a root account for a second, and I will simply just delete these locks right here. So if I just type apt-get install Python 3 once again, we get these locks. So we are going to copy the path to the lock. Could not get lock. Let me just check. Open, resource temporarily available, unable to require the front-end lock. Okay, so let us copy it and let us simply just delete it. Okay, now we're going to get another error right here, which is going to be a different lock, so we are going to delete that one as well. I believe there are going to be 3 locks. Now this is a really common error, so just do simply as I do. I believe not right now we're going to get another error. The following packages were automatically installed and are no longer required. Okay, so Python 3 is already the newest version, as it says right here. And there are some different packages that need to be that are no longer required, but we are not going to bother ourselves with that at the moment. The next command we want to run is the apt-get install, get install idle3, which is the interactive development environment for the Python. What you want to click right here is Y, which will indicate that you actually want to download the idle3. And it is a 10.5 megabytes large, so this will take a few seconds or minutes depending on your internet, and then you will be able to use Python 3. Now there is also another thing that we want to install, which is the Python 3-pip, which we need in order to actually be able to download different libraries that we might not have in our Ubuntu machine. So that is something that we want to get as well. As we can see, the downloading has finished. It will unpack the libraries right now, and we can execute next command. So let us wait for this to finish, just a few more seconds. Okay, it is setting up different things that it needs. Okay, it has finished. And the last command we want to run is the apt-get install. So install Python 3-pip. So press here enter. It will download the Python 3-pip. As you can see, this is a little bit larger, 84.3 megabytes. We want to click here Y, so it can actually download it. And this will be the last actual command for installation of Python 3. Now once this finishes, I will simply show you how you can enter the idle of Python 3 or the interactive development environment. And basically it is simple. In Linux you can just specify one word, which is the Python or Python 3, whether you want to enter the Python 2 or Python 3 version of the Python interpreter. Just type that in the terminal, and what it will do is it will open the same Python interpreter that we saw in Windows. So let me just show you while this is downloading. If you just type idle in Windows and open the 3.7 idle, this is something that will be opened in your Python interpreter, or pardon me, in your Ubuntu terminal. So something similar to this. So let me just close this. I will wait for this to finish, and then we will proceed to the next step, which is going to be the installation for the Mac OS. Okay, so after a few minutes I noticed that my actual internet actually, for some reason, is only the download speed is only 5,000 bytes per second, which is really small, considering that we only need to download 44 megabytes. So I will just quit this right here. I will download it later on. And before we end this tutorial with the Mac OS, let us just see how we can actually run Python from the actual terminal. So all you need to do is simply just type Python 3. And you can see it will open the Python 3 version, and basically it will give you the same interpreter as in the Windows. And right now, right here, you can import different libraries and so on and so on. Execute different commands, such as, for example, hello world, and basically do anything that you will do in the regular program as well. Now, don't really mind these two lines. If you are new, I will explain them later on. For now on, I just wanted to show you how the interpreter works and that we successfully have everything installed. So right now, let us get to the actual Mac OS installation. Since I don't have it, basically what you want to do is navigate to the Python 3 downloads or python.org/downloads/ and then there you want to find the DMG file that suits your OS X version. And basically once you download it, just run it and follow the instructions for installing Python, and that is all you need to do. And it will install the additional and all the libraries that you need, so you will be good to go. And that will be about it for this tutorial. What we are going to do in the next one is take a little closer look to the idle, and I will explain a little bit why do we need it. As I said before, the idle is this Python interpreter, or basically the interactive development environment. I will explain why do we need it, and then we will start doing some simple coding stuff. So hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I hope I see you in the next one. Bye! Hello everybody and welcome back to this tutorial, and right now let us take a closer look at the interactive development environment for Python 3, or also known as IDLE. Now, we downloaded everything we need for all our platforms such as Windows, Linux and Mac OS, and right now, in order to start the actual IDLE or the Python 3 interpreter, just type in Python 3 if you are using the actual Linux, and just go to the start button, type IDLE, and navigate to the IDLE Python 3.7 version, whether it is 32-bit or 64-bit. Now I have multiple versions installed right here, that's why I have this many, so I'll just go with the newest version of the 64-bit Python 3. You can see they are rather the same on both of these Linux and Windows systems, and what IDLE or the interactive development environment is basically it is used to help us with the errors, most likely. Now, let's imagine you're writing a program in some text editor or in Visual Studio or wherever you actually want to write the program. So, for example, let's just say you're writing it in the Notepad, and you write a bunch of lines, of code lines, different tens and tens of pages, and then you don't know, you get an error, and you don't know where that error is, or what the problem with the error is. What this Python 3 interactive development environment or the IDLE allows us to do is simply just execute a single line at a time. Then we can actually see whether there is a problem with that single line, such as if I type right here print and open and close brackets. Now the print function will just basically print what we type in the brackets themselves on the screen. So you need to open the quotes. So I will open right here. Let me just find where the quotes are. Okay. And then you can just type here hello. As you can see, if you use that function print hello between the single quotes, it will just print hello to the screen. And there you know that this function actually works and that the syntax for this function is correct. But if you, for example, type print and then open and close brackets, add the single quotes, or add one quote and type hello, and forget the next quote and type enter, you can see EOL while scanning start string literal. Now, syntax error basically means that you coded something wrong in the program, and what this Python 3 interpreter allows us to do is to notice where that error is. Now, you might notice that this error actually doesn't give us too much of a detail. Sometimes these errors can actually be a little bit of complicated, but right here we know that we forgot to add the actual single quote. Now I will explain everything why we're adding single quotes, what this print function is, but for now let us just see what this IDLE interactive development environment is. So, you most likely will, while you're coding, have both of these open, such as the Notepad or any other text editor to write the program, and also have the Python 3 interpreter in order to test a single line in order to see whether the syntax is correct. So you don't have to actually find the errors in the entire program itself. So in order to open IDLE, I already told you, you can just go to the start, type IDLE and open the IDLE for the version you want to. On Mac OS, you open the IDLE by going to the Windows Finder, or you can open Windows Finder, click on Applications, and then Python 3, and then on the IDLE. In the actual Ubuntu, you can either type it like this, just type in your terminal Python 3, or I believe, let me just check out right here, if you go to the application accessories. Okay, so let me just see, show application. Okay, let me just check something out. If I just go back right here, open this, let me exit it to see whether we can actually open it with the IDLE 3. IDLE 3 not found, did you mean IDLE? Okay, so let us try with the IDLE itself. And here it is. You can either run it like this, which will look exactly the same like this one, or you can run it from the Python 3, or pardon me, from the terminal as Python 3. That is on you. So that is basically it about IDLE. We are going to continue coding in the next lecture. For now on, we got some of the basics, such as downloading the Python, navigating to the Python directories, basically interacting with the IDLE itself, and right now we're good to go and we should be able to start coding. So hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I hope I see you in the next lecture. Bye! Hello everybody and welcome back to this tutorial. And what we're going to do or start right now is we're going to start with the basics of Python programming, such as variables, basically the integers, strings, math operators, comparison operators, Boolean values, and so on and so on. Some of the basic stuff that you need to know before you actually start coding real programs. Of course, you will need to be familiar with the variables themselves, you need to know what integer is, you need to know what string is, you need to know how to do simple calculator operations such as additioning, multiplication, division, exponent, and so on and so on. We're going to take a look at all of that in this lecture right here, or basically we're going to take a look at the math operators in this lecture, and later on we will see more about the variables themselves. So, first of all, open up your idle, which I already have opened right here. You can enlarge it if you want to. I have this print statement from the previous lecture. Let me just go right here. Okay, I will just reopen it so we have a new and a clean version open. So idle 64-bit, here it is. Okay, I will enlarge this and we can see that we have a simple 3-line or 3 arrows right here indicating that we are going to type a command right here. So first of all, you can take a look at the idle as a big calculator. So for example, if you just type here 2, it will print 2. But if you type 2 plus 2, it will print 4. So it basically performs a simple addition with the specified numbers. Of course, that can be any other number, such as 2 plus 4 is 6. You can also try to subtract the numbers, so 2 minus 3 will be minus 1, and we can see that the Python interpreter already knows all of this basic stuff. So therefore we can conclude that the actual addition and the actual subtraction, as we can see right here, is performed same as in the real world. So we can set a variable and set that variable to be equal to 2 plus 2. And then that variable will have a value of 4. But there are some different things that we also need to consider in the math operators. So we saw the addition and the subtraction. The multiplication is done with the star right here. So if you just type 2 times 5, you can see it will print out 10. So the multiplication is actually used with this star sign right here. Now, the two star signs, what the two star signs will do is basically that is so-called an exponent. So if you just type here a 3 on third, we will get a result of 27. But in order for Python to understand what a 3 on third degree means, basically we need to type something like this. So 3 and then add 2 star signs and then 3 right here. What this will do is it will perform 3 times 3 times 3, which will give us 27. So basically, if you just type here 3 times 4, it will perform 3 times 3 times 3 times 3. So it will times 3 4 times and we will get 81. So that is the exponent. Now let us take a look at the division, since that is also something important. There are different types of divisions, basically based on the actual variable types, such as the float and integer. The integer variable type will be the entire number. So for example, if 3 is an integer, but 3 times 0, or pardon me, 3.0 is a float value, because we have the actual digit behind the actual dot. So it is a decimal number, it is not an entire whole number. So once again, the integer is the whole number, the float value is not. So let us see how we can actually get both the integer and both the float value out of a simple division. So if you just type right here 22 and you divide it by 7 right here, you can see we get this number right here, which strangely looks something like pi, but okay. It starts the same, so 3.14, which I didn't even want that to be, but here it is. Something funny happened, and this, you can consider this to be an actual decimal number. So this is not an integer, this is rather a float value. Now right here, in order to get an integer value, of course you will need to divide the number with the actual dividable number, so 20 divided by 5 is 4. Now you can see we still get 4.0. That is because you're using a single slash right here. So the single slash will always give you whether the number is whole, or like this 4 right here, or whether it is not, like this 3.14 right here. It will always give you a decimal number as a result. So if you even type 1 divided by 1, so 1 divided by 1, you will get 1.0 as a result. In order to get an actual integer value without any decimal behind it, you can just use double slash. So 1 and then double slash and then 1. And you can see this will only print 1. So make sure to remember that the 1 slash will give you a decimal value, while as the 2 slashes will give you an integer value. So it will not only give you an integer value once you perform the division of the actual dividable numbers. If you, for example, go with the same number right here, which is 22 divided by 7, you will get 3 as a result. Whoops, I used 22 divided with a single slash, so we need to use double slash. With 7, you can see it will circle the number to the closest whole number, which will be 3. Of course, if the result was something like 3.6, it will circle it to be 4. So let me just try it right here. If you just go with 7, okay, so 25 with 7. Okay, so if you just now divide 25 and then 2 slashes with 7, okay, so it will always, it will actually always circle it to the lower number. It doesn't work like in math. So for example, if you had 27 divided by 7, you can see that the 27 divided by 7 is 3.85, which if you actually encountered in math, you would circle it to the whole number, which is the closest, which would be 4. But Python 3 will always circle it to the lower number, which in our case will be 3. So if you just use 27 and the 2 slashes 7, you can see we still get 3 as an answer. Now, another thing that we need to take a look at in Python 3 is the module, which is the remaining of the actual division. Now, the module is referred to in Python 3 with the percentage sign, so this sign is referred to as a module in Python 3. And what this module will do is it will perform a simple division. So, for example, if you just use 22, or let me just divide it normally, so 22 divided by 8, you can see the result of 22 divided by 8 is 2.75, which means the 8 goes in 22 2.75 times. But what this will do is what the module will do is it will see how many times does 8 go in the 22, and we can simply perform it in our mind. We know that 8 goes in 22 2 times, which will give 16, and the remaining will be 6. So 16 plus 6 equals to 22. So what module, so 22 module 6, or pardon me, 8, will give 6 as a result. Because 22 equals 2 times 8 plus 6. So that is the basic understanding of the actual math operators. Those are all that there are. Now we're going to look at different operators later on, such as the comparison operators, the smaller, the larger number, and so on and so on. But for now on, this will be enough. One more thing that you need to know is which of these actually comes first. Now also something to take a look at is the actual privileges of these different math operators. So we know that in math, the actual division has more privileges than the actual subtraction and addition. But in Python 3, the actual biggest privileges have the brackets. So for example, as in math, if you specify open and close bracket, you can see right here, I already tried something, and you type, for example, 5 plus 5, and times it with 2, the result by math right here should be 20, since 5 plus 5 is something that we do first, which is 10, and then we times it with 2, which is 20. And if you just press here enter, the result in Python 3 will be the same, so we know that the actual brackets have the biggest privileges in Python 3 as well. But right after the brackets, if you, for example, wanted to perform something that didn't have brackets, the privilege comparison would be something like this. The biggest privileges would have the exponent, which is these two stars right here. Then after the exponent goes the actual multiplication. After the multiplication goes the division with a single slash. We know the division with a single slash will give us a decimal value. After the division with a single slash comes the division with two slashes, which will give us the integer value, whether that number is divisible by that actual number or not. Right after the double slashes go the actual module, all these percentage sign, and right after it goes the plus and minus, which is the last privilege math operators in Python, as well as in math as well. So that is something also that you should take a look at. So for example, let us give it a try. Let us try to divide and also multiply numbers at the same time. So if you go 2 times 2 and then slash 2, or let's do slash actually 3, let me just check out right here, or let's do 2. Okay, so we know that in math, for example, this would be equal to or not in math, in Python 3, we know now that this will be equal to actually first executing the multiplication and then the division. So this should be equal to 2 if you press here enter, and it is. Now this is not looked at as the 2 times and then 1, since 2 divided by 2 is 1. This has the most privilege. This star sign has the most privilege, or the multiplication sign has most privilege. So let us try in reverse. So 2 slash 2 times 2, you can see the result is the same, so the order of the signs don't really matter. So that is all I wanted to show. Hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and we will continue coding and we will continue learning in the next tutorial. Hope I see you there, and take care. Bye. Hello everybody, and welcome back to this tutorial. And in the previous tutorial we took a look at different math operators that can be used in the Python 3 interpreter, whether you're using simply just numbers as we did in the previous video, or whether you're actually storing different numbers in variables and then using them as variables. But what we are going to take a look at now is some strings or arrays, or however you want to call it, in Python 3. So first of all, let us think what an actual string is. So we know that a number is simply a number, but our Python 3 or our program has to know when we actually want to type a word or a sentence or any paragraph or something like that. What string is basically strings are words. Now you define strings in Python with the actual single or double quotes. So for example, if you just use single quote and then hello, you can see this will print hello as a string. If you just type hello without single quotes, it will give you an actual error saying hello is not defined. Because if you don't have a quotes, it will try to search hello as an actual variable. And we have not defined any hello variable, so therefore we cannot really find hello, and therefore we get the error. You can also use the actual double quotes if you want to, so you can see right here, hello, it will print the same output as in the single quotes, which is just simply hello. So this is what a string is. Basically a word or a paragraph or an actual sentence defined between the single or double quotes. Now, what is interesting in Python 3 is that the strings or the math operators can actually be used on strings. Not all of them, but some of them, such as the addition, the multiplication, you can use that on strings, and we will show just in a second how you can do that. So just open up your idle, whether it is in the Ubuntu like I'm doing right here, or whether it is in your Windows 10 environment. So just open it anywhere you like. And let us use the Windows 10 environment right now. Doesn't even matter. And first of all, before we actually take a look at the math operators using in the strings, let us see how we can actually manipulate strings differently. So if you just type here single quotes, hello, and then add a plus sign right here, and then open single quotes once again and just type here world, you can see that we actually get printed out hello world. Now you might be asking right now, first of all, why did this actually get printed out as a one word? And second of all, why this doesn't have any space between it? Well, The plus sign can actually concat strings for us, same as the numbers. If you, for example, type 2 plus 2, it will give you 4, but if you type string plus string, it will add the second string to the ending of the previous string. And the reason why we don't have any actual space between these two words is because we didn't define any space in our strings right here. So if you want to have space, you can just type hello and then add space and then specify the single quote and then plus world. And you can see right now we get printed out hello world. Now of course you don't have to do this like this. You can simply just type open quotes hello world and then close quotes, and it will print the same thing without using the math operator plus and concatenating two different strings. Now one thing you can't do is you can't, for example, concat strings with numbers. If you try to do something like this, so hello and then plus 4, it will give you an error can only concatenate string to integer, or pardon me, concatenate, what did I even say? It doesn't even matter. So can only concatenate string, not integer to string. So what this basically says, you can concat two different types of actual variables. So for example, you can concat an integer or a number to a string, which actually makes sense. You can only add number with number, and you can only add strings with strings. However, you can actually multiply strings with numbers. Since we can't add it, we can try to multiply it. So if you just type here single quote hello and then times 4, you can see what we get as an output is an actual hello 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 printed out 4 times. Now if you want to print it 100 times, you can do that. So hello times 100, you will get printed out hello 100 times. So let us see how we can actually do it with variables, even though we haven't really covered variables yet. Let us see, I will just show you an example of how this would be useful with variables. So let's say string 1 equals, so just copy the same names. I will explain what kind of names variables need to have later on. For now on, just call it string 1 equals open quotes and just type here hello. String 2 will be equal to open quotes and just type world between those quotes. And let's see how we can actually, instead of just typing the actual strings themselves, which really wouldn't make any sense. For example, let's say that you need to type a whole entire paragraph which will be stored in one string. It is rather easier to just type the variable name than to type the entire paragraph when you want to use it. So in order to concat the strings, we can just add some string number 3, which will be equal to string 1 plus string 2. You can see everything worked without an error. And if I just want to print the string 3, which will be the value stored in string 3, you can see we get printed out hello world, which is normal, and that is what we expected. But right now, if we want to change the string 3, we can do it with just simply typing string 1 times times 4 plus string 2. And if you just type here string 3, you can see hello, 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 world. So what it does first, since our string 1 has a word hello in it, it will multiply it 4 times, as we can see right here. And then at the end, it will add the string 2, which in our case is just world. So you can perform something like this as well. Or basically, this is something that you will perform. Most likely, you will not be doing anything like this, since this only works in the interpreter itself. If you wanted to write this in any text editor or in any program that you are writing, this will give you out an error saying basically nothing right here is really defined, therefore the program doesn't really know what to do with this. But if you write it something like this, this is something that the Python program will recognize, and it will execute this, printing the hello world string. This as well right here. But of course, if you're wondering, you can't really divide strings. So string 3 divided, or string 3 equals string 1 divided by string 2 will give you out an error saying unsupported operand type. So basically you can't really divide strings because we don't really know what that would be. You can only multiply and add strings. So that would be about it for this simple basic introductory to these strings themselves. Of course, we will manipulate them on a whole another level later on, but for now on this will be enough. If you're a beginner, this should be enough to actually understand strings at the most basic level, and we are going to continue coding and learning in the next lecture. So hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I hope I see you in the next one. Bye! Hello everybody, and welcome back to this tutorial. And what we're going to do right now is we're going to take a look at how we can add values to our variables. Now, we already saw some of the examples in the previous video as we actually try to concat different strings. We use those string 1, string 2 and string 3 variables, but right now we're going to take a look at more examples of this stuff. So first of all, open up your idle. I will open it up right here, and to actually give a value to a certain variable, we use an equal sign. So basically just simply equal will give a value to a certain variable. Now, the variable you can call anything you want. In just a few seconds or moments, we are going to discuss how you can actually name variables. There are different types of names that you can use, and there are different types of names that you can't use. Of course, I will discuss all of them, but for now on, let's just name a variable named a. Now, a can have a value of 5, and that is how you simply just put a value into a certain variable. In order to check out the value that is stored in the a, you can just type here a. It will print out what value it has. Let me just enlarge this. We can see a has value 5. You can also do something like this. So print, we use a print function, and in between the brackets you specify a. Now, notice that right now, once I'm using a print function, I'm not really using a double or single quotes in order to define a. That is because a is variable and not a string, and I can simply just put it in between the brackets without the single quotes, and it will print the value of a. Now, let's actually add a value of b to be equal to 7, for example. Doesn't even matter, it can be anything we want. We can now manipulate these variables such as a plus b. It will give us a result of 12. A minus b. It will give us a result of minus 2. We can also do something like this. For example, print, and in between the brackets, a times b. Oops. And we can see we get the result of 35, which is 5 times 7. So this is just simply using, instead of the actual values, you want to use the actual variable itself. Now, variables can also be strings. It doesn't have to be a number, as we saw in the previous video. If we c equals and then a certain string between these single quotes, for example, just like this string, and if you just type here c, it will print out the string, which is just simply specified between the brackets as a string. Now, you can also concat two different variables which have to be the same type, so you can't really add the string variable with a string variable. You can only add number with number, or pardon me, the string variable with the number. You can't really do that. You can only add number with number and string with string. So if you just type here d equals, this is, or let's do something like this, so dash dash or star, this is a string. You can use any characters you want between the single quotes, so this is a string. And if you just type here c plus actual d, we get the output of string, this is a string. So simple as that. Now, let us now discuss what or how you can actually name your variables. Sorry everybody, my PC crashed, so I had to actually restart it. So right now, let us continue from where we stopped. Let me open up my idle right here. And what we are going to do right now is talk briefly about the actual naming of the variables. Since you can't really name a variable anything you particularly want, there are certain rules that you need to follow while naming the variables. Now, for example, the most important thing is that you don't name the variables with a name of the actually already used word in Python. Now, what I mean by that is don't name a variable the same as some function that is in Python. For example, don't name a variable print. If you name it print, basically it will mess up with the actual print command. So I tested it out. If you just check out right here, print equals to, it won't print any error right here, but if I just try to print the print variable, it will not know what the actual variable, what the function is, and it will say integer object is not callable, because right now it is referring to the print as the actual integer number and not the function that is pre-built in the actual Python 3 itself. So even if you, for example, right now set some variable a to be equal to 5 and wanted to print that a variable, it will still not work, because right now the print function doesn't even exist anymore. It is set to be equal to 2. Therefore, the print function cannot be used anymore to print the statement to the screen. So let me just restart this and open the next one. And you can see right now, if you don't really mess up with the print function, you can simply just print a and it will work as usual. So that is the most important thing, but right now let us go to the rules of naming the variables. First of all, let us talk about what are the correct variable names. So for example, let's say we want to create a variable called variable. This would be a normal or basically a correct variable name, so you can use smaller character word as long as it is not used in Python 3, as I said, and you can set it to be equal to 3 and you can just print variable and you can see it will work. You can also use multiple words, such as, for example, variable 1 equals to 5, and if you want to print variable 1, it is still a legit name and it will still work, as it does belong to the actual rules that we are going to cover right now. If you want to separate these two words, you can do that, but you can only do that by specifying the underscore between those two words. Such, for example, if you want to name it variable underscore 1 equals 6, you can do that, and you can also print it. Underscore 1, it will work. One more important thing is that the variable name can start with the dash. Now, it cannot start with a number or with a character or special character such as apostrophe and so on, but however, it can start with a dash. So you can just type it -1 equals 3 and you can print -1. It will print it out to the screen as it is a valid variable name. The usual capital letters can also be used, such as, for example, string equals hello world, print string. Though not many people really use this, but you can use a capital letter if you want to. If you want to interact your variable name with numbers, you can do that by adding the actual number to the end of the string. So for example, string 2 equals, for example, hi. And you can print string 2. So these are all valid names for the actual variables. As we can see, we can add numbers to the end of the string. We can also print the string in capital, or not the string, the variable can be actually capital name. The variable can also start with the dash at the beginning of the actual variable name. It can have a dash to separate those two words. Now, of course, you do not need to use it to separate words. You can separate any letter if you want to with dash, but the important thing is that the dash is not something that can be used. Also, it can come in the lower letters and also multiple words, doesn't even matter. Now, let's talk about some of the things that you can't really do with the variables, such as, for example, you can't name a variable like this. So variable, not dash, this is underscore, and this is dash. You cannot name it variable dash 1. As you can see, name 1 is not defined. Even if you try to set a value to it, variable dash 1 equals to 3, it will say can't assign to operator, because this dash sign is basically referring to as a minus, which we use in this abstraction. Therefore, we get this error right here. So this is an invalid variable name. Also, of course, you cannot name it like this. So you can't really name a variable with two separate words. You need to have something in between, and then something is usually the underscore, as we saw right here, because then the Python 3 interpreter doesn't really know this 3 to put it either in the variable or either in the one, because it is referring to this as two different variables. Therefore, it only prints out the one to be the invalid syntax. If you, for example, deleted this one, this would be a valid variable name. One more thing, the variable name can't start with a number, so 5 string equals 3 is an invalid variable name. You cannot start a variable name with an actual number. So that is another thing to take a note of. And also, the variables can't really be numbers, which is normal because you are actually adding a value to a variable. If you, for example, type here 23 equals 5, you cannot store a value of 5 into 23. Python interpreter doesn't really know how to do that. It says right here, can't assign to literal, because 23 is already a value, so therefore we cannot really use it as a variable name. So let me just say it once again. Also, you can't use the characters such as the the percent sign, the hash, wherever the hash is on the keyboard, the $sign. Basically, all of those signs shouldn't be used in the variable names, or not shouldn't be. They can be used in the variable names, as well as the special characters such as apostrophe. So that would be about it for the variable names. Hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I will see you in the next one. Bye! Hello everybody, and welcome back to this tutorial. And what we're going to do right now is we're going to take a look at writing our first program. Now this won't be anything really special. We're going to use what we already learned, some of the functions. We might introduce a new function that we didn't cover yet, but don't worry, this is nothing really too extreme. This is still some beginner stuff. And we're going to see how we can run that program in our Python interpreter, and also where we can write it. Now, first of all, for this part of the tutorial, we're going to use idle, and we're going to write the program in the idle notepad shell. That's how I call it. In order to access that shell, or that part of the file that you actually write the program itself, just click on the file, click on the new file, and it should open a window like this, which basically looks exactly the same as this window right here, except this one doesn't really have this printed out. Right here, you're writing the programs, and then you can actually save this to a file and run the program from here. So let us see what we're going to write. Now, of course, if you want to, you can also use Notepad++, for example. Some people use that in order to write their programs. Let me just see what this is. Okay, these were some of the previous DLLs that I actually was watching. Doesn't even matter. You can use any text editor you want to write this program, and we're going to take a look. So let us write our first program now. We are going to use the print function that we already know what it is, and we're also going to take a look at the input function, which allows the user to actually specify or to interact with the program itself. So first of all, let us do something like this. We will select a variable called x. We will call it simply just x, or let's call it, just for the educational purposes, number_1. So that will be the variable name. We can set it to be equal to input and open and close brackets. Now, what this input function will do is basically, once we run the program, it will block the program entirely, and it will wait for a user of the program to actually input something into their keyboard. So for example, it will pause at this part right here, and it will wait for a user to specify, for example, 3 or 4 or 5. Since it is a number, we will need to specify the number to the actual program. So number2 underscore 2 will be also equal to input, and we can print something like this. So we want to print calculating result and 3 dots, so it looks like the program is actually doing something, and then we can actually perform anything we basically want. We can add these two numbers, we can multiply these two numbers, we can let's simply just multiply these two numbers. We can do that just by actually selecting a variable. We can call it z, or let's just call it result, because we didn't call these first two x and y. So result will be equal to the actual number 1, so number underscore 1 times number underscore 2. And then all we can do right now is actually print the result to the screen. Let me just see why is this tabbing in by itself. It doesn't even matter. We can just print the result to the screen. So we can print something like this. Print the result is, and then 2 dots. Let us add a space, and we can concat, since we know that we can actually concat the actual strings. We can concat 2 strings. But you might notice that this result variable will not actually be a string, it will rather be a number. So in order to make it a string, we will use a function that I will explain later on in another future video. But for now, just for the purpose of the video itself, just use it. It is called str, stands for string, and it will basically make a number to be a string. So let me just type it right here. It has open and close brackets because it is a function, and in those brackets we specify what we want to make a string of. So we want to make a string of the result number. So let us see how this will actually work. If I just go right here, run, and go onto the run module, source must be saved. Okay, so let us save the program. We can save it on the desktop as a first program.py. Save it just like this while scanning string literal. So let us see what the problem is. Input right here. Okay, so let us do something like this. We will in the double quote specify enter the first number. We can do something like this, then it will wait for the actual input, and right here also in between the single quotes enter the second number. And then out of these 2 numbers we can make number 1 equals integer of number 1. Now I'll explain everything, just let me type this out. So number 2 equals integer of number underscore 2. Now let us right now try to first of all save this. So save, run. Oh, okay, I see where the error is. This is an error that I showed you before. Basically, I am missing an actual quote right here because I only opened a single quote right here. I really never even closed it. That's why it actually gave us an error. So let us save this and try to run it once again. Run module. First thing we get printed out is enter the first number. So let's enter the first number to be equal to 5. It will ask us enter the second number. Second number will be equal to 6. And you can see it prints out calculating result. The result is 30, which is correct. Now let's take a look at the actual code right here and explain everything a little bit better. So first of all, as I said before, this input function right here will prompt the user to enter something. Now if we didn't specify this string right here, it will only hang right there. It wouldn't print these 2 strings right here. It will just wait for the input. That's why it's always best to specify to the user what they need to enter. So for example, they don't enter a string. We type here enter the first number, user enters the first number, then it goes to the second line, which is number 2. It performs the same actual function of input, so it will hang and wait for the user to specify the second number, as it says right here, so enter the second number. Then out of these 2 variables, we will make an integer. Now why are we doing that? Well, basically this input function can sometimes return a string, and basically what we want to do is try to make an integer out of these 2 values. Same idea as we did right here. We try to make a string out of an integer. Now, you can't really do that with all of the stuff. So for example, let's take a look at this. String equals hello. If you wanted to make a string to be equal, or let's do it like this. So redesigned underscore string equals integer of this string. This will not work. As you will see right here, this will not work because the hello is not even a number. But if you just type here string1 equals to actually open single quotes and type a number right here, so for example 3, not 3 and this letter, let me just do it once again, so string1 equals open single quotes 3, and then we want to try do the same thing, so redesigned underscore string equals integer out of string1. You can see right now this did work, and if we print redesigned underscore string, it will print number 3. So you can make an integer out of a string that is a number, but you can't really make an integer out of a string that is a word, which actually makes sense. It goes vice versa as well. So you can't make an integer out of a string, and you can make a string out of an integer if they are not a number. So right here, let me just see. So we printed out calculating result right after we actually converted these two values to be integer. If they aren't, then the result is equal a normal just mathematical equation, which is just multiplying these two numbers that the user inputted, and then we print the result is plus the string of the result. Now the reason once again why we are using the string of the result is because if we set right here result to be equal to 30, as I believe it was, and we try to perform the same right here, so let me just copy this. Copy this line, I will paste it right here. I will delete the string function, I will just concat the actual result. You can see that we actually get an error. It says can only concatenate string, not integer. That's why we need the string function to convert this result number 30 to be an integer. As you can see, if we just type here result, it is now an integer, but if I just type here result equals string of the result, and I just type result once again, it is now a string. You can see the difference because this doesn't have single quotes and this does have single quotes. You can always convert it back if you want to. Result equals integer of the result, and it will once again be a number. So that is our entire first program. It is not really anything special, but it is basically our first program, so that is. Of course, we are in the future going to code more advanced programs. This is just something to show you this input function right here, and to show you this string and integer function, which we are going to take a look at in the future videos in more detail. But that would be about it for this video. Hope you enjoyed it, and I hope I see you in the next tutorial. Bye! Hello everybody, and welcome back to this tutorial, and what we are going to take a look at right now is the certain functions that allow us to convert the actual values from the certain variable into different type of values. Now we also took a look at something like that in the previous tutorial once we coded our first program, but right now we're going to experiment a little bit more with it, and we're also going to take a look at two different functions that we didn't cover. So first of all, open up your idle right here. And we're going to use the Python interpreter for this program. We don't really want to write anything to a file for now on. We want to take a look at these two functions first of all. So let us remind ourselves with the actual string and integer function. So first of all, let's set a variable a to be equal to 3. So simple as that. We know that the a is the name of the variable and the 3 is the value that is stored in that variable. We also know that the 3 is an integer, so the value is integer in our variable a. Let me just see if I just use this. As you can see, if you use a function called type, it will tell you what type of variable that is. As we can see, class integer. So we notice that our variable really indeed is integer. But for example, we know that the integer is an actual whole number, which means that it doesn't have a decimal value or point something behind it. In order to turn that into an actual float value, you can use a simple function called float. So in order to do that, we can just use something like this. So b will equal to float of a. Now what this will do is basically it will take the value from A and it will turn that into a float value, and the float value will be basically 3.0 or 3.000 depending on how many zeros you actually added to be stored in this variable. As we can see right here, currently it is only 3.0. We can use a type function in order to see what type of actual variable this is. So let us take a look at that as well. So type and then open bracket b, close bracket. We can see that the type of b is float. So we successfully converted the a variable to be a float variable and also stored that into a different variable. Nothing really too hard to do, but still it is something. The more we learn, the more we know. So let us continue and let us see what we can do with the string function that we covered in the previous video. So right now we currently have two different variables. One of them is an integer and one of them is the float. So let us check out right now whether we can make both of those values to be equal to string. So we can just type here a equals, and we want to use a string from the a. That will be the first integer value, as we saw right here, which is the value 3. And if we just type here a, you can see we now have the a or the 3 between the single quotes. We can try to do the same thing with the actual b variable. So let us do something like that. B equals string of b. Nothing, we didn't get any error. We just type here b, we also get the actual string value of the b variable. In order to check it out, you can just type b and it will say class string. So both a and both b right now are both strings, no longer integer and float, and that's how you can convert the values or the type of values one to another. Right now, let us take a look at another function, which is called the length function. What the length function does is basically it shows you what is the length of a certain either list or something like that. So let me just show you right here. If you just type here length a, it will say it is 1. Now the reason why it is 1, first of all, we know that currently, because we changed it, the a is now a string, as we see right here. And the length of a will print out 1. Now, you might be asking, why is that? Well, basically because the length of the string that is stored in a, which is just 3, is equal to 1. There is only one character. If you just type here, for example, let's say like this, string equals hello. We know that the hello string has 5 letters, so if you just type here length of the string, you can see that we actually get the result of 5. Now this result right here is an integer value and it can be stored into a different variable. So for example, set equals length of string. Or we can use length of b right now. We know that the b is string 3.0, and if you just type here set, it is equal to 3. It is an integer value of 3. Now of course the good practice would be to not name it set or c, or however you, pardon me, not set, c, or however you want to call it. It is best practice to name it something like this. So length underscore of underscore b equals length of b. That is how you can actually keep a track of all of your variables, and right now you know what the actual length of b variable is, while as once you actually had c, imagine you had thousands of variables, you would probably forget what c was for. So that's why it's a good practice to actually have variables named appropriately. And right now if we want to print length of b, underscore of underscore b, it will print out 3. Now this length is also used in the lists in order to, for example, count the number of elements in a certain list, but list is something that we'll cover later on. No need to worry about that at all. It is also used in some for statements. Now for statements are also something that we will cover later on. Basically it is widely used in Python 3, so this is not a function that you should just forget. It is also very helpful in many programs, so that's that as well. Now let's try to see whether the length will count the empty space also as a character. So you can see right here, if we just type here string underscore 1 equals open single quotes, and there we can just type here hello world, our usual string that we also always use. So press here enter, and if we just use the length of the actual string 1, we should get printed out everything, or the length of this actual string, including the empty space as well. As we can see, the hello has 5 letters, the empty has 1 character, which is added to 6, and these 5 add to 11. So let me show you right now, if you, for example, set an integer, so a equals back to 3, it is no longer a string, and if you just type here a length of a, you can see that you will get an error. That's because you can only use the length on the strings and also on the lists. You can't really use it on a number because we don't really know what is a length of a 3. For example, if you set a to be equal to 33 or 333, doesn't really matter, you would still get an error because the a is a number. It will not print out 3 as a result because it would, well, maybe by some logic it could print out 3 because there is 3 digits right here, but it doesn't work like that. You can see object of type integer has no length, which is correct. The integer number really hasn't, you don't know how to count its length. So that would be basically about it for these simple functions. What we learned right here is that we can actually turn specific variables into different variables. We can also check out the length of the certain variables, strings, elements, lists, or however you want to call it. Now that is useful later on once you actually have a huge, for example, let's say you have a huge text right there and you want to check out how many characters are in that text. You of course won't go one by one character and count it by hand. You will go and basically use length of that actual paragraph and count how many characters are in that paragraph, including the empty spaces, the special characters, and so on and so on. So, hope you enjoyed this tutorial. It was a rather short one, and we will continue coding in the next lecture. Bye! Hello everybody, and welcome back to this tutorial. And what we are going to do right now is we are going to introduce ourselves with the logical Boolean values. We're also going to take a look at some of the comparison operators in Python. So what we did by now, we took a look at some of the different variables, how to store variables, how to name variables, how to convert variables from one type to another type, how to basically count the length of a certain string, paragraph, or the list. And right now we're going to introduce ourselves, as I said, to the Boolean true or false values. Now you might be asking, why do we need true or false values? Well, basically it is really important, especially in loops, as you will see later on. For now on, we will only introduce ourselves with that, and we will see how we can actually set the variables to be equal to either true or either false, and so on and so on. We will also take a look at the comparison operators, which is not the same as the math operators. We saw what the math operators in Python are, and right now we're going to introduce ourselves with the not equal, equal, greater and lesser, and so on and so on, which is also really important in loops especially. So let us open up our idle. First of all, I will close this one from the previous video, then I will open a new one, 64-bit, okay, that is the one. And right now, first of all, let's see how we can actually check out whether something is true or whether something, or how we can set a variable to be equal to true or to be equal to false. Now if you just type in your interpreter true, it will print out true. If you just type here false, it will print out false. Basically, these are the two values that are already pre-installed or that come in Python, basically, not pre-installed. I don't know what I'm saying. And you can put these variables, and you can put these values in an actual variable. So for example, let's call it a equals true. Basically, right now, if you just type here a, you will see that a equals true. Now, it is really hard to explain like this, but it has a really good use, especially in the while true loops, which is an infinite loop. If you create a while true loop, it will basically perform a certain task for as long as that certain element is true, which can, in our case, be forever if we never change a to be equal to false. Now, of course, I will show those examples as well later on. For now on, we just want to see how this works. So, we set the a variable to be equal to true. Let's set the b variable to be equal to false. And if you just type right here a equals b, you can see that right now a is false as well, and b is also false. So let's set a back to true. So I just wanted to show you that you can actually set the values from one true or false variable to another true or false variable. So that is something you can do as well. It will not give you any error, but what this really has usage for is the equal with. Now, in order to perform the equal with sign, which is a comparison operator, it will basically compare these two numbers or these two values and see if they are the same. Now, we know that they are not the same because a is now true and the b is false. And in order to compare those two values, you just type the value or the variable 1 equals equals, so double equal, and then the variable 2. And you just press here enter and you can see we get printed out false. Now you might be asking, why did we get printed out false? Well, basically, take a look at this. You have one variable that is true, one variable that is false, and it basically performs, is a equal to b? Is true the same as false? The true is not the same as false, therefore that statement is basically false. That's why we get printed out right here false. If we get something like this, so a equals true, b equals true, and we perform the same comparison, so a equals b, it will get printed out true because true is true. You can do the same thing with numbers, of course. It doesn't have to be the Boolean values, true or false. You can set a to be equal to 3, or pardon me, to 4, and b to be equal to 3. And if you perform a equals b, you will get printed out false because 4 is not equal as 3. Maybe this is a little bit more explanatory example, maybe you will understand it a little bit better than with these true and false values. Now let's see what it prints out once the actual values are correct. So b equals 4 b equals 4, not 5. And then we compare them, and that now this is true. As I said, this is mostly used in loops, so while true, while false, and so on and so on. We can set the variables to be either true or false. Then make sure that you remember that the equal sign is not the same as double equal sign. So that is really important because with single equal sign we set a value to a certain variable, and with double equal sign we compare the value to a different variable. So this right here will set 3 to be stored in a, and this right here will check whether a is equal to b. That is the difference between one equal and double equal. So now, right now, let us also take a look at some of the other comparison operators in Python. The double equal is not the only one, so let us check out how we can actually check if something is not equal to the actual second variable. So what we will do is we will set a to be equal to true, b to be equal to false, and right now, let us check if a is not equal to b. So a, in order to do that, you just type exclamation mark and then equal and then b. And you can see right now we get true, unlike in here where we got false. So what this basically means is it will check if a is different than b. Since a really is different than b, since a is true and b is false, we will get printed out true. Yes, a really is different than b. Let us try with numbers so you can understand it better. A equals 5, b equals 3, a is not equal, or check if a is not equal to b, and it will print out true. A isn't equal to b. If we set b to also be equal to 5, and we print out, and we do the same thing, so a and then exclamation mark equals b, we get now false. A is equal to b, therefore this statement is not correct. So this is also something useful that we will use later on, but these are not the only comparison signs. Of course, we have the greater or lesser, and we can see right here, if we just type here a greater than b, we get printed out false. Now we get printed out false because a is not bigger than b, because both a and both b have the value of 5 stored in them. But if we set b to be equal to 4 and now perform the same task, we will get true. Therefore 5 really is bigger than 4. This is basically the same. So this statement right here and this statement right here are exactly the same. Just these two have values in those variables. We can also do the same thing with the lesser sign. So 5 is smaller than 4, which is of course false. We know that. And there is also two more that we need to cover, which is the greater or equal and lesser or equal. So we have these, we have the equal sign, we have the double equal sign, we have the exclamation mark equal, we have the greater, lesser, and we also have the greater or lesser. No, pardon me, greater equal or lesser equal. So let's say both A to be equal to 5 and B to be equal to 5. And right now, if we just check something like this, so A is greater or equal to 5, this should be true. Pardon me, not to 5, to B, so greater or equal to B, we get printed out true. Also, if you try to reverse it, so A is smaller or equal to B, this is also true because both of those values are 5, therefore, in both of these cases, they will work. Now, this is also something that you can use in the loops as well. So, for example, while A is smaller or equal than 5, do this task. And then in that task, what you do is you basically increase A after every iteration. Of course, we are going to take a look at those examples as well. Maybe right now, this is looking a little bit confusing to you, but it really shouldn't be. This is just basic math right here. What is important is how you actually use this stuff right here. So that will be basically about it for this tutorial. We will continue coding in the next tutorial, so hope you enjoyed it, and I hope I see you in the next lecture. Bye! Hello everybody, and welcome back to this tutorial, and let us introduce ourselves with a new thing that we are going to learn right now, which is the if statement in Python 3. Now this is the first actual kind of a loop that we are going to do, and basically this is really important, so make sure to pay attention. It is not that hard, especially this tutorial, which is going to be just the basic stuff for the if statement. In the next two tutorials we're also going to cover the if-else statement and the if-else statement with multiple else-if statements, if you understood what I'm saying. But for now on, let us just cover the if statement only, so open up your idle as usual. And right here, basically, we can just try to perform the simple if-else statement, or just if statement in this tutorial. So if you just type here, if, you can see it already gets flagged as a word that comes in Python, so it already gets colors. So if, what this basically does is it will look like this. So if something, now of course we don't have variable something, but we'll just use it just for the demonstration purposes. If something equals to something, 2 dots, then you need to tab the next line. As you can see, it tabs by default, do something. And we can see invalid syntax, of course, because this is not something that actually exists, but this is the basic idea behind the if statement. So for example, we can do something like this. A equals 3. B equals 3, and we can just try to do like this. So if A equals to B, 2 dots, make sure to tab everything in, because if you don't tab it in, which the actual interpreter in Python 3 does by default, but if you're using some text editor and you don't tab it in, it will not be considered as a part of the actual if statement. So if A equals B, print, and we can print basically anything we want. We can print these two values are the same, exclamation mark. You just press here enter once again, and you can see right here we get printed out these two values are the same. But let's see what happens once actually B is not equal to A. So A equals 3, B equals 4. And we will do basically the same thing. So if A equals to B, and we will print the same string. So these two values, values are the same, exclamation mark. And if I just press here enter once again, you can see right now nothing gets printed out. So this is an if statement. It is only used once something is equal to something, or when some statement is fulfilled, such as in the first example right here, A was equal to B, therefore we did this. Now of course this is not really that useful of an example. What you want to do in a real life program is basically you want to do some useful task once A equals to B, for example. So let's do something like this. So let's set A to be equal to 5, B to be equal to 5, and if A equal to B, we can do something like this. A equals A times B, which will basically make an A after this if statement to be equal to 25. So we can do it like this. Press here enter, our if statement has finished, and if I just type here A, you can see right now A is no longer 5, A is right now 25. So let me just check right here. You don't really need to use always this equal, you can use something like this. So if B is smaller than A, which currently it is, since A is 25, you can print B, or B is smaller than A. Close the actual bracket right here, press enter, and we get printed out B is smaller than A. So this is basically a simple example of the if statement. What we are going to do in the next video is basically cover the if else statement, which is going to add another statement in case that this one is not fulfilled. So for example, imagine if this is not fulfilled, then we need to do something else, and that else will be in an if else statement. So hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I hope I see you in the next one. Bye! Hello everybody, and welcome back to this tutorial. And what we did in the previous one is we actually coded a simple, or we didn't code, we just checked out what the if statement can do for us. Right now what we are going to do is we are going to check out what the if else statement does, and we are going to code a simple password checker for us. Now first of all, before we start coding, let us check out the if else statement. So go up, open up your idle or your Python 3 or however you want to call it, and let's actually check out what we can do with the if else statement. So first of all, we're going to do the same thing as in the previous video. So we will set some variable to be equal to 5, and we will set some variable b to be equal to 5 as well. And then we're going to perform the if else statement. So if a equals to b, we're going to print simply just, let me just find the single quotes. Okay, here they are. These two values are the same. So simple as that. So these two values are the same. What we want to do right now is just go right here. Let me just go right here. So else, oops, unintended does not match any outer indentation level. Let me just see, because I'm not really sure if I am supposed to tab it or not. So we'll just type it once again. If a equals b, print, and we will just print the same thing. These two values are the same. And we will then type here else. Unintended does not match any outer indentation level. What do you mean? Why won't you work like this? Or, okay, we'll just do it like this. It is rather easier, so just go to the new file right here. Or maybe we are not even supposed to tab the actual print statement. So let me just check it another time. Third luck. So print, these two values are the same. And then else. Okay, never mind. It says invalid syntax. We'll just go right here and we will do the same thing. So what we are going to do is set the a to be equal to 5, b to be equal to 5, and we are going to perform the if else statement. So if a equals to b, we'll print right here the same thing as we did in the previous 3 tries. So these two values are the same. In any other case, we will use an else statement, and there we will print these two values are not the same. So simple as that. So these two values are not the same! Exclamation mark. And what this basically will do is it will check, basically it will do as it says, it will check whether A equals to B. If it is equal to B, it will print this statement right here. If it is not equal to B, or if you, should I say, else, it will print these two values are not the same. So let us try to run this module right here. So run module. Okay, so it must be saved. So let us go to the desktop, second program.py. Run it. These two values are the same. So you can see it finishes relatively fast. It prints out these two values are the same. So everything works perfectly. Right now, let me just find the program itself. Right now, let us switch it up a little bit. We will set the b to be equal to 3. And right now, if we perform this program or run this program once again, it shouldn't print this, it should actually print this. So let us go right here, run the actual program, run module. It must be saved. We saved it, and you can see the different string gets printed out to the screen. So these two values are not the same. So that is the simple use of the actual if-else statement. Now you can do different things with it, such as, for example, let's check it right like this. If A is greater than B, let me just do it like this. We will not print this. What we will do is we will actually add B to B. We will add 2 to B, so B equals B plus 2. And then at the end, or right here, let me just first of all switch this as well. Right here, if the A is really bigger than B, or if A is not bigger than B, we will make A to be equal to A plus 2 as well. And at the end, we are going to print these two values. Print A and also print B. So what this will do, since A is 5 and B is 3, it will not execute this statement right here. It will only execute this statement right here, and these two print statements should actually print both 5. So both A and both B will be equal to 5. Now make sure that if you actually copy this right here, so copy these two statements, whoops, where did they go? Okay, so copy these two statements and put them before the if-else loop right here, you will see that we will get two different results. First of all, this will print out these two values, and then it will perform the if-else loop or statement, and then it will perform the different values. So let us run it. If I just click here on run module, save it, you can see we get printed out 5355. Since the first two values were A equals 5, B equals 3, and the second two values after the if-else statement was B equals 5 and A equals 5. So that is our simple if-else statement. Right now let us code an actual useful program for the first time, which will be a simple password checker. So we're going to do it like this. We can use the same program right here. We're just going to delete all of this. And let us first of all think about it. So what do we need to implement for our password checker? Well, of course, there first of all needs to be a password. So let us just type here password. We will use a simple variable password to be equal to, for example, 1, 2, or let us just do something like this. Capital P or password 1, 1, 2, 3, which is the usual password that everybody uses. So this is the actual password. And let us think what we need to do in order for this to work. So first of all, the user of this program will need to input some password. Therefore, we already know that we're going to use that input function that will pause the program and wait for the user to type something in. Then what we need to do afterwards is actually just compare the inputted password with the password that the actual program has stored in this password variable right here. Basically, if they do match, which will be in the if statement, if they do match, we will print access granted. If they don't match, we will print access denied. Please enter the password again, or please run the program again. So let us see how we can do that. We will make a variable called user or inputted password, so inputted underscore password, so we know what this variable is and we don't confuse it with the password variable right here. We'll make it to be equal to the actual input, so input right here. We are using the input function. Between that we need to specify the single quotes, and between the single quotes we're going to specify to user what they need to do. So please enter the password. We'll specify 2 dots and a space, and this will basically just prompt the user with this statement right here. Then once we actually input the password, let us just convert it real quick to the actual string, even though this is not something that you should do, but you can do it if you want to. Sometimes it might present problems, so it is always good to do something like this so your program doesn't crash. So what we did basically is we created our inputted password to be equal to the string value. So if, for example, user types in an integer right here, we don't really want an integer to be compared to a string because it will give us an error. We want to compare a string to a string. So all we are left to do right now is perform the if-else statement. So if inputted password underscore password is equal so is equal to the password that the program has specified at the beginning, which is this one right here, we want to print, can print something like this, correct password, and we can print, oops, where is the quote? Okay, so here it is, access granted. And then in the else statement, so if user specifies basically anything that is not the correct password, we want to print simply wrong password, 3 exclamation marks, and also print access denied. So the user knows that they didn't get the password right. So access denied. And 3 exclamation marks. So simple as that. Let us save this program. So save it to the second program.py. And all we want to do is try to run it in our actual shell. So run module. Right here we can see we get the actual string prompted to please enter the password. And let's type here hello world. You can see we get wrong password, access denied. So hello world is not an actual password. Let us try to actually specify a wrong password once again. So run module once again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Wrong password, access denied. Let us now try to specify the right password, which is the capital P, and then password 1, 2, 3. Let us run the program. Password 1, 2, 3. And you can see correct password, access granted. So our actual password checker works correctly. This is first useful program that we actually coded. It is rather short one, as we can see. It is only few lines of code. And there it is really easy to understand, nothing really too complicated here yet. And basically that would be about it for this tutorial. What we're going to do in the next one is we're going to take a look at the if-else statement with multiple else-if statements. Now what I mean by that is sometimes, for example, you want to check three different outcomes. For example, if inputted password equals to password, also if inputted password equals to password in capital letters, else, and then some different things. So for example that. Or if number, you will see the example that we are going to do will be if number is greater than 0, print number is greater than 0. If number is equal to 0, print number is equal to 0. And also if number is smaller than 0, print number is smaller than 0. That is what we are going to do in the next video. So hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I hope I see you in the next lecture. Bye! Hello everybody, and welcome back to this tutorial. And in the previous video what we saw is we coded a simple password checker. We also were introduced to the if-else statement, and what we're going to do right now is we're going to see what the if-else statement can do once we have actually multiple statements that we want to specify. We're also going to write a simple example to demonstrate that thing. So, if-else statement has something called else if, which you can add in between the if and in between the else statement. So I mean in between those two. There can be as many else if statements as you'd like, or as many as you need, and then you can code them into your program. So let us see how that will work. Open up your idle right here. We're going to open a new file. Let us right away save it as thirdprogram.py. So save as to the desktop, thirdprogram.py, and press here enter. And right now we're going to code this simple program right here. Or let me just, there's no need to actually enlarge this. Let us code it like this. So let's think about it. So first of all, let us do something like this. Inputted number, so inputted underscore number will be our actual variable that will store a number that the user will specify in the program itself. So once they run the program, we want to use the input function, and we want to prompt the user to specify any number they like. So specify any number you want. This will get prompted to the actual user. We can then print the number if we want to. So inputted underscore number. And right now, right here, we're going to get into the else if statement. So first of all, we want to check if. So if inputted number underscore number is bigger than 0, so simply just specify it like this. What we want to print is print okay, here it is, inputted number, and then we can concat the string, so plus the string of inputted number, and then plus another string which will be, for example, is smaller, or is bigger, pardon me, is bigger than 0. Let's also add a space right here so we don't actually concat the string right one behind another one. So basically what we are printing right here is if inputted number is bigger than 0, we basically are going to print inputted number plus the string of the inputted number, which will just transform this integer value right here to be a string. So first of all, before we actually convert it, let us type it right here to be an integer. So inputted number is going to be equal to integer of the inputted underscore number. Just in case, we're only going to use the string value of it in the print statements, and we're going to print inputted number, then the inputted number string is bigger than 0. And then we want to type here else for the second statement. So else, it is smaller than 0, of course. So else print inputted number. Basically we want to do the same thing, so plus string of the inputted number itself, so inputted number close the brackets plus, and then we want to write right here is smaller than 0. Right here we do not need, or we can use these actual two dots. So let me just add it right here as well. But you might notice what happens if the user types 0. So let us actually take a look before we actually code the rest of the program. What would happen if user specifies 0? So run module right here, save it, specify any number you want. Let's first of all check it whether it works for the numbers greater or lesser than 0. So 3. We print out the number itself, so right here, and we get inputted number 3 is bigger than 0, which is correct. Now let's try with a different number, so run -3. Inputted number -3 is smaller than 0, so our program works perfectly in these two cases. But we also have a third case where we actually can run the program and the user can specify simply 0. And it says right here, inputted number 0 is smaller than 0. Now the reason why it says this is because it is in the else statement. So what this program basically did is it checked whether 0 is greater than 0. Then it will print this. In any other case, in basically any other case, it doesn't have to be the case where the actual number is smaller than 0. It also can be equal to 0, as in our case. It will print the inputted number is smaller than 0. But we also want to add an else if statement in between, which we can add just like this. So else if, simply just specify elif. It is shortened for else if, then 2 dots, or basically not 2 dots, you want to specify the statement. So else if inputted underscore number equals to 0. Then we want to print, let's go right here and print inputted number, and then plus the actual string of that number, string of the inputted number, and then plus open single quotes is equal to 0. Basically this should be the entire program. Let us see how this will work. So we added another else if statement that will check if the inputted number is equal to 0. So let us save this first of all. So save and then run it right here and specify any number you want. We specify 0 and you can see inputted number 0 is equal to 0. You need to actually do it like this if you don't want to. You can basically just simply delete this right here. And for your own needs, if you, for example, wanted to do something like this, you can also use a simple if-else statement, but also add right here equal sign, so greater or equal to 0, then print inputted number plus string inputted number is bigger than 0 or equal to 0. Let me just move this so we can see the entire program. And then you can save this right here and you can run it like this as well. Basically you will not have an else if statement. What you will do is you will simply print out once the number is greater or equal to 0, you will print inputted number is bigger than 0 or equal to 0, which really doesn't make any sense. The previous version is a lot better, but if you need something like this for any case you want, you can do it. So let us run it. Specify -2. Inputted number is smaller than 0. Let us run it once again. So run module. Then let's specify 3 is bigger or equal to 0. And also once we actually specify 0, it should print out the same thing as we can see right here. So the inputted number 0 is bigger than 0 or equal to 0, which is actually kind of correct. It is not bigger than 0, but it is, however, equal to 0. So that would be a simple example of the else if statement. We covered fully the if statement with the if else and with the else if statements. So that part is finished. What we are going to do in the next video is we are going to cover the while loop. So hope you enjoyed this tutorial and I hope I see you in the next lecture. Bye. Hello everybody and welcome back to this tutorial, and right now we're going to take a look at a different loop which is called the while true loop or while loop. Basically there are different types of this loop, whether they are infinite or not. We're going to cover both of them in this tutorial. I will show you different examples for this actual loop, how you can use it, what you can do with it, and where you can use it as well. So open up your idle right here. Let us open it up. let us try to code it right here. If it gives us some syntax error, we will just open up a real program or notepad or something like that, and we will code the program there. So first of all, while loop is most likely always going to be used with the Boolean values. There are a bunch of these. You will see in different programs there are a bunch of while true loops. Basically, a while true loop is a loop that is most likely going to be infinite until the value is changed or until the loop is broken out of. Now what I mean by that is basically if you type while true, so while true, let me just show you, and add 2 dots, and you just type here print hello. Let's imagine what this will actually do. So while true, and true is always true, you can't change true to be equal to false, it will print hello. If I press here enter, you can see it will print hello string forever, which we don't really want. So let us control C this. As you can see, if you control C, it will print out keyboard interrupt, which we actually want to do. If you didn't do this, this would run forever. So same as that, you can just type here something like while true, and then, or let's do it something like this. So I will be equal, let me find equal, okay, I will be equal to 0. So we set a variable I to have a value of 0. Then what we will do is we are going to do something like this. So while true, let us increase I by 1. So I equals I plus 1. You can see nothing is really happening, there is nothing being printed out, but we are also not getting these 3 arrows prompted back to us. That is why this is an actual while true loop, and it will perform this forever until we actually perform a keyboard interrupt to this while true loop. It will increase the I, which we set to be equal to 0, for 1 every iteration. So what it does, it goes to this line, it performs this line, it sees that there is not another line in the actual loop, it goes to the beginning, it performs this line again, and it does that forever. So if I control C this and just type here print underscore I, you can see that the I now has a value of something around, I believe, 36 millions or even more, 364 millions, if I can count the digits well enough. Probably can, but doesn't even matter. So you can see the usage of a while true loop. Now I will show you in the next tutorials how you can actually escape a while true loop even though it is infinite without actually closing the program itself. So there is an actual statement or word that we can use that will help us do that. But for now on, let us check out what else we can do with the while loop. So it doesn't have to be a while true loop, it can also be while false loop. But then if you just type here something like this, while false, I equals to 0, and you just press here enter, you will see that nothing will get executed because while false is always false and it will not execute this loop. Therefore, this actual loop has no meaning at all. So now that we checked out the while loop with the Boolean values, let us check out the while loop with normal values. So we're going to set our I variable back to 0. So it doesn't have this huge value to it. We will set it to be equal to 0. And what we are going to do is while I is greater or lesser than 100, for example. So let's do it like that. Then add the 2 dots. Let's see what we can actually do here. So we can just type it. We can just do something like this. So print I, or let me just add a single quote. So I is still smaller than 100. And then we can add 2 spaces and add the actual string of the I to the actual statement right here and close another bracket because we opened double brackets. We also need to close double brackets. And also, if I just run this, this will also become an infinite loop because we are not increasing I anywhere. If I just simply run this, it will print this statement forever. What we want to do, so it doesn't do that, we want to increase I by 10. So let's just do equal I plus 10. Oops. And if I run this, you can see it finishes relatively fast. It says I is still smaller than 100, and then it prints I right next to it. So we can see that I was smaller than 100 up to the 90. Then in the next iteration, what this did is it checked out, or let me just go from the beginning. So first of all, I was 0. This then loop checked whether I is smaller than 100. It found out that I indeed is smaller than 100, and then it proceeded to execute the code in the while loop. It printed out this statement right here, and then it increased I by 10. Now, then it performed that until the 90. Then you can see that it checked out whether 90 is smaller than 100. It printed out 90 is smaller than 100, and then it increased I by 10. Then in the next loop, it checked out whether 100 is smaller than 100. It found out that 100 indeed isn't smaller than 100, and then it didn't proceed with the next statements in the while loop. But let me show you how you can actually change the output of this just by switching these two lines right here. Well, let me just think about it. Maybe it is not right here if 90 is smaller than 100. Yeah, let me show you like this. So what we will get right here is we will not have this statement right here. Instead of this statement, we will have 100 statement, which will not be correct. Therefore, be careful which line you write first. So let me just show you. If only I switch these two lines one with another, this statement will become different. So if I is smaller, first of all, let me set I to be equal to 0. And then if I is smaller than 100, pardon me, while I is smaller than 100. And then, first of all, we will increase I, so I equals I plus 10. And then we will print I is still smaller than 100. We will have to add the string of the I, so plus string of the I itself. Whoops. Close double brackets and press here enter, and you can see we get an entirely different output right now just by switching these two lines. Even though we perform the same code in both of them, you can see that right here we don't have this line right here, and we instead of it get the 100 printed out, which is not really correct. I is still smaller than 100, and then I is 100. That is not really correct. Therefore, be careful which line you write first. So first of all, write this line and then increase it right afterwards so it can go to the next loop. So let me just check out what else we need to cover. We can also show another example of the while loop. So let me just show you. It doesn't have to be while I is smaller than something. It doesn't also have to be while true or false. It can be while. First of all, we set once again I to be equal to 0. We will reset it, and then while I is not equal, so we perform is not equal by specifying exclamation mark and then equal right here. So while I is not equal to the, for example, 100, what we want to do is basically, let's do something like this. So I equals input, so we will prompt the user to input a number, enter any number. So this could be something similar to the actual password checking. So we're doing this in an infinite loop until the user actually specifies the correct number that's specified in the program. So I'm going to show you that in the right after this as well. So enter any number, and then we can actually, or we don't really need to print anything. Let us just enter right here. So 92, we get prompted once again 23, 33, and if I just type here 100, oops, okay, so 100. Let us try something differently. Okay, yeah, we got a string of 100. You know, I forgot to actually add I equals the integer of I. So let us just rewrite this real quick. So while I, first of all, set I to be equal to 0, while I is not equal to 100, we want to perform the input function. So I will be equal to input, enter any number. Simple as that. Then we want to make I to be equal integer of I. Or you can actually do that in this line as well. So you can do something like this, integer out of the input. You don't have to do it in a second line. So let us delete this right here. Now, since you're firstly encountering with something like this, what this will do is it will perform the function inside first, so it will prompt us to input this, then it will turn it to integer and store it in I. So let us see how this will work. Press enter, 23, 33, 44, and then 100. And you can see once you specify 100, it checks out right here if I is equal, if I is not equal to 100, then it sees I is equal to 100, therefore it will not perform this. So this is another useful type of usage for the while loop, where you simply check whether a certain value is not equal to another certain value. Now let's see how we can actually write this for the password. So password will be equal to, for example, let's use something else. So right here we can use hello world. So that is our password, our standard good old hello world string. So right now we want to enter a while true loop, or not a while true. So while, well, let me just double check this first of all. Okay, so we can do something like this, while inputted underscore password is not equal to the password. We want to prompt the user, so inputted underscore password equals input enter password. So let me just try right here. Input password is not defined. Yeah, I thought so. Let me just go right here. Inputted underscore password equals, or let's think about this. Maybe we can actually approach it with a different principle, also using the if-else statement. Let me just think about it. Yeah, okay, let me first of all try it like this. Enter password, simple as that. And then I enter the actual while true loop. So let me just do it like this. So hello will be our password, and right now while inputted underscore password is not equal to password, inputted underscore password will be equal to another input. I'm just checking something out, whether this will work or not really sure. We'll have to figure it out. Inputted password is not defined. Yeah, because we actually called it input password, not inputted password. So let me just fix that real quick. So input password is not equal to password. Input underscore password equals input. I'm really curious whether this will work. We are going to have to check it out. Okay, so enter password. We are right here getting prompted to enter the password. Let's add 1, 2, 3, hello, and then just world, password. And if we just specify the correct password, which is hello world, I believe, we get exited out of this program, which means we specified the password correctly. So that is good. So basically that is all we actually have about the while loop. Of course, we are going to use it and abuse it later on, of course, in the actual real programs that we are going to code. For now, this is just some of the basics. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I hope I will see you in the next one. Bye! Hello everybody, and welcome back to this tutorial. And right now we're going to take a look at a different approach to the while true loops, or basically the infinite loops. We're going to learn how we can deal with them, how we can actually close them even though they are infinite, and break out of them with a simple command. So what we are going to do is we will code the same program from the previous video. That's why I was so confused, because I didn't want to show you how to properly code it until we actually get to the break statement right here. And right now we're going to code a password checker with the actual while true loop. What this will do is it will actually prompt the user to enter the password for as long as they don't specify the correct password in the program. So first of all, let us write the simple program. We want to open a new file, so we want to open this right here. Let us save it right away, so save as to the desktop. We can call it fourth program.py. Okay, we saved it, and right now let us actually see how we can do this. Now this will be a little bit harder than the previous videos or the previous programs that we did, especially for the beginners, because we're going to do something which we haven't done before, which is going to be embedding an if-else statement into a while true loop. So you will see, trust me, it is not really that hard. It is rather easy. Just try to make sure that you understand it the best you can. So first of all, we will start off by actually setting the password as usual to be equal to anything we want. So we can set it to be equal to, right now, let us switch it up. Rainbow is the password. And let's actually add the capital R right here as well, just for the thrill. And right here, we are not going to actually prompt the user to input the actual password right here. We are going to prompt the user to input the password in the while true loop itself. So, you know, in the previous video, what we did is we actually prompted the first time we prompted the user to enter the password outside of the while loop. And right here, we want to type while true, and then we want to prompt the user for the password. So while true, inputted underscore password is equal to, let me just check this out. Okay, so is equal to input, and then we want to specify to user enter the password. Okay, so we prompt the user in the while true loop to enter the password. Now if you just ran this program right now, what this will do is it will basically prompt the user forever to enter the password. But we don't want that. We want the user to actually get the access granted string printed out once they actually get the password correct. So we can do that with the if-else statement. So if inputted password, so inputted underscore password is equal to the password. So this is something that we are already familiar with. We did something similar to this, so nothing really to explain right here. If inputted password is equal to password, we want to break out of the loop. So basically what we are doing right here is we are breaking out of the loop. In any other case, we are not going to break out of the loop. It will just go right back right here, and it will check whether the inputted password is equal to password. If it is not, it will go right here and then back to the beginning of the while true loop, prompting us to enter the password once again. And if we manage to get it, we want to print right here password correct, and then in the next line access granted. So let us take a look at this once again. It is a rather short program. We set the password variable to have the password itself, then we enter a while true loop, which is an infinite loop. Then we prompt the user to enter an actual password. We compare these two passwords, so we check whether the inputted password from the user is equal to the password specified in the program itself. If it is, we're going to perform a function called break. Now, as I said before, this break function will simply break out of this loop, but it will not close the program. Don't confuse it with closing the program. This will only exit the while true loop, and then it will continue executing to the next step, which will be print password correct and print access granted. The reason why we're actually printing this right here is because this part right here can only be accessed once the password is correct. If the password is not correct, this will run forever. So let us see how this will work. If I just go right here, or first of all, let me save it. So save, and then I run it. You can see we get prompted enter the password. If I just type here password, it will ask me again 123, password 123, hello world. Nothing really works. Even the lower letter rainbow will not work, as you can see right here. Rainbow will not work. But once we actually specify rainbow, we get password correct, access granted. So we were successfully able to actually code a password checker with a while true loop that has an if statement in it. So this would be a more appropriate way to actually code a password checker than in the previous video. What we are going to do in the next video is we are also going to take a look at a continue function in Python 3, which is also going to help us with the loops themselves. So that would be about it for this tutorial. Hope you enjoyed it, and I hope I see you in the next one. Bye! Hello everybody, and welcome back to this tutorial, and right now we're going to finish up and wrap up with our while true loop, or just while loop, however you want to call it. Now, the case that we are going to take a look at right now is how we can, for example, break out of the loop or use the while true loop or the infinite loop, however you want to call it, in the case where we actually have a counter, such as in the previous examples where we had I, then we checked whether I is smaller than 100 or whether I is not equal to 100, and then we perform some tasks. So we are going to do the same thing, just right now we are going to use a while true loop. And we are going to see how we can actually make it work even with an infinite loop. So open up your idle. Let me just go right here, type here idle. And right here, what we can actually do is, first of all, we will open the new file. The reason behind that is because we are going to actually use the if-else statement, and the actual idle gives me some problems with the syntax while I try to run the if-else statement. Doesn't even matter. We're going to write a program right here, and we're going to use a function that comes in Python, which is called the continue function. Now what this function does is basically it just continues the program, it continues the loop, and it runs it back to the beginning. So let me show you right here what we can do. So let's say that the I is equal to 0, for example. And then let's say we want to enter a while true loop, as we do want indeed. So while true, and this is an infinite loop, as we know. We're going to perform some if-else statements, so just add if right here. So let us think about what we can actually perform right here. So if I is smaller than 100, so let us try to perform the same actual example that we did with the while I is smaller than 100, just right now we're doing it in the infinite loop. So while I is smaller than 100, we want to actually continue, and then we want to increase, pardon me, not increase, or yeah, we want to increase, so I equals I plus 1. So what this will basically do is it will increase I by 1 as long as I is not bigger than 100. In the else case, let me just check out right here. If I is smaller than 100, in the else case, we simply want to break out of the loop, because it means that right now I is smaller than, I is bigger than 100. So let us see how this will work. First of all, we need to save this. So go right here on the save. Click here. Let's call it, let's go to the desktop first. Let's call it fifth.py. And then we can run the program with the run module. So let me just see, something is not going well because we are stuck in the actual loop. Let us see what the problem is. So I is equal to 0 if I is smaller than 100, which it is. Continue. Oh yeah, we are not really increasing it. We need to do something like this, which really you can make this work even without the continue, but you can add it if you want to. So I equals I plus 1. Continue. Let me just check out right here. First of all, save it and then run it. Okay, so this worked much better. Let me just check out how we can implement the continue in order for it to actually do something. So if you switched these two, or not switched, if you instead of the break right here clicked continue, you would see that our actual while true loop continue would never really end. This is because it will go right here and it will go in circles. Now the I would never cross 100, but our loop would never end either way. So let me just show you. If you just click here save and run the actual module, you can see that we are not getting our prompt back. We cannot execute more commands because our while true loop is running in infinite mode. It is basically continuing and continuing in an infinite loop. And if I just Control C and print I right here, it is still 100. No matter how long we actually ran that loop, it would still be 100. It would not increase. Basically that loop, what it did, it didn't do anything. It just performed in every check whether I is smaller than 100, and it just continued to the beginning of the loop. So this is just a rather short tutorial showing you the continue function, which can be used in the while true loop, has some useful stuff with it, which we will show later on. But for now on, that would be about it for the while loop, and it is time to actually introduce ourselves with the actual for loop. So hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I hope I see you in the next one. Bye! Hello everybody, and welcome back to this tutorial. And right now what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the for loop. So we already covered the if statement, the if-else statement, the while loop, the while true loops, how to break out of them, how to continue in them. We coded some of the some of the useful programs such as password checker. Really nothing special yet, but hey, that is something as well. So let us go with the for loop right now. In order to do that, we can just open up our idle, and the for loop usually, but doesn't have to be, but usually comes with the statement or the function range. So what that means is that it allows us for some counter in range, from example from 1 to 100, we want to perform a certain task. Of course, in that counter, in that for loop, we also want to increase that counter every time we perform that specific task, because otherwise that would be an infinite for loop, and that is not really that useful for us. So let us see how we can actually implement the for loop. So first of all, while you are actually using the counter in the for loop, it is good to notice that you don't really need to define it before it. You can actually use it, or the for loop defines it itself. So for I in range, for example, 1 to 100, as I said, so like this, add the two dots, and right here, for I in range 1 to 100, you want to perform some specific actual function or some specific task right here. So we can just print hello. We're not really doing anything specific, but I'm just showing you how you can do that. And then of course you need to increase the counter right after you perform that certain task. Otherwise this would not make any sense. So you want to increase it. I equals I plus 10. Press here enter once again, and we get printed out the actual pardon me, this is a for loop. Yeah, I forgot. You don't really need to actually increase the counter in the for loop. The for loop increases it itself, which is another good thing. So for example, let me just do it once again, since we actually added a line that we don't need. So for I in range 1 through 10, so let us use it 1 through 10, print hello. plus string of I. So this will be printing out hello 1, hello 2, hello 3, hello 4, and so on until hello 10. So just type here, right here, enter. It finishes our for loop. You can see that right here we didn't really increase the counter. Not really sure why I told you that you need to increase it. I maybe mistook it with the actual while loop and if statement. In the for statement, you don't really need to do that. The for does it for you. The for statement does it for you, as we can see right here. For a certain counter I in range from 1 to 10, we're going to print hello. And it printed out hello 10 times. Starts counting from 1 and goes through 9. The reason why it doesn't go through 10 is because the 10 is not basically considered as in the range itself. So there is also another thing that is mostly used in the for statement as well. This is a function that we already encountered before, which is the length. So if we just specify a string, for example, now I will use it with a string, but it is most likely used always with the list itself, counting the elements, but right now we're going to count the characters from a string. Now if you have no idea what I'm talking about, don't worry, right now I will show you. So let's say we have a string that says, let me just find it, that says hello there. Simple as that. String that says hello there. Then you can use a for loop that will actually go through the range of the length of that certain string, which isn't really that useful for us right here as a string, but it would be useful if we had a list. We would go through the range of the length of that list, and the length of that list would be retrieving the actual number of elements in that certain list. So let me just show you what I mean. Let us first of all count how many characters are in this string. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in hello, 1 empty space, and 5 more in there. So 11 characters in this string. Then we can use for I in range, and then open brackets, length, open another brackets, from the string, close two brackets, and then let me just go right here, 2 dots, print, this is length of string. Doesn't even matter what you print, this is just so it prints something. You press here enter and it will print this is length of a string the same amount of times that there are characters in the actual string itself. So this right here is the actual, first of all, it performs the inner function, which is the length. The length of string is 11, and what this does is for I in range 11, so 1 through 11, this will get printed out. And that's why it gets printed out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 times. So that is basically a simple usage of the for loop. Now, also, there are a few other things that you can do with it, which we are going to cover, such as, for example, this range right here doesn't have to be an actual specification of 1 through 10. You can actually specify it to count 1 through 10, but every second steps, for example, it will print out every second number. This will get shortened out from 10 times printed out to 5 times printed out, and you can specify that with the another comma and then the number that you want to skip. So for I in range 1 through 10 and then comma 2. What this means is it will go for I in range 1 through 10, but each time it will not increase I by 1, it will rather increase I by 2. So that would mean that, for example, if I is 0 at the beginning, or pardon me, 1 at the beginning, it will be 3 in the next turn of the for loop. So I'll show you right now. It will print it only 5 times. So print, this will get printed 5 times. Close this, and you can see this will get printed 5 times. Now if you specified any other number here, such as for example for I in range 1 through 10, and then the actual 5, so that means that this will get printed out 5 times. Print hello. No, pardon me, 2 times, not 5 times. This will get printed out 2 times. Close the brackets, and you can see this gets printed out 2 times. Now also one more important thing, well, not so important, but one more thing that you should know is that you can actually count backwards with for loop. So you don't need to type here for I in range 1 through 10. You can simply type here for I in range 10 through 1. But right here, you need to also specify how to adjust the I variable. So we need to actually subtract it every time by 1. This will also print the actual statement 10 times, but it will go from backwards. In case you want I to go from 10 to 1 instead of 1 through 10 for any reason you want. If you want, for example, to print a list like this, so let me just show you. For I in range 1 through 10, and you simply just print I, you can see it gets printed out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. But if you just type here for I in range 10 through 1, and then comma -1, and then you specify print I once again, you can see it gets printed out in 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. So it goes backwards. Now in some cases that might be useful. For us it really isn't at the moment. I just want to show you that there is that option as well. And basically that is all for the actual for statement. Now what we are going to do in the next lecture is we are going to cover some of the modules, importations, library importation, and how you can use different libraries that are already pre-installed with Python 3. We will take a look at some of them. Now we will not, of course, use many of those functions yet. We're only going to see how you can import them and how you can use them. So hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I hope I see you in the next lecture. Bye! Hello everybody, and welcome back to this tutorial. And right now what we are going to do is we are going to take a look at the import function in Python 3. Now importing modules is very important because it allows us to import different Python programs into our own program, which allows us then to use different function methods from that specific program. Now we didn't cover functions yet, but basically our function is everything that performs something. So for example, the print is a function, the input is a function. We will cover and code our own functions later on, but for now on, let's see how we can use those functions from different libraries that the Python 3 gives us. So open up your actual, oops, not that, open up your IDLE right here, and in order to import some library that you need, such as basically all of your real actual programs will need some libraries. For example, the OS library, the sys library, subprocess library, socket library for networking, and so on and so on. In order to import any of those, you can just type here import, and then afterwards space, and then the name of the library itself. So let's, for example, import first the OS library. Now, the libraries are most likely always going to be imported at the beginning of the program, right at the top. So you import all the libraries you need, and then you perform your own code down below. Now, let's see some of the actual functions that we can actually get from this OS library. So, for example, in order to access a function from this specific library, you need to specify first the name of the library itself. So in our case, that is the OS, so just type OS, then dot, and then you specify the name of the function. So you can see right here, let me just go right here. Right here, by default, the Python interpreter will give you the name of all the functions that the OS library has, so you don't actually have to remember them. But right now, what we are searching for is the system library. The system function. What this function will allow us to do is to actually, for example, create files, delete files, and do anything, or basically send any command to our system. So, for example, let's execute a command cd. If you just type here enter, oops, let me just put that into an actual, never mind, you can't really do that, but you can do something like this. I mistook this library with the subprocess library, which I will show you just in a second. If you just go right here, new folder, create it, call it test, and try to perform the os.remove and then the name of the folder itself. So if you just specify between the single quotes test and press here enter, the system cannot find the specified file test. Okay, maybe, yeah, of course, because this is not really in the actual path that the actual folder is. So just go right here onto the new file, import os, and then use os.remove, and then between the single quotes type test. Save this on to the desktop or save it to the same folder where your test directory is. So save, I want to save it right here as the remove.py. Save it. We can see that our program, let me just find it. Oops, where is our remove.py? Okay, so here it is. If we run it, run module, access is denied for test. For some reason we get access is denied, but never mind, we can just, oops, let me just try it like this. For some reason we get access is denied, but it doesn't even matter. Let me just check out what happens if I just use system and then, for example, dir in between. Will it list it right here? Yeah, probably not. It will only execute it, doesn't even matter. We will check the output with the subprocess library. What matters is that we can actually create the directory with it. So let me just go right here, save as once again. But not this program, we want to create a new one. And we want to do the same thing that we did, just into a different directory. So import os, and then file save as. Or let's just try to create an actual directory. So we'll use os.system. Even though this is not how you should create files, we can try to do it. mkdir test. We save it right here, which is in the app data local Python 37. So right here should the test should be actually saved. So let me just save it right here. Let's call it again remove.py because it is not in the same directory. We can call it like that, and I will run it from my command prompt. So cd app data, cd roaming, cd programs, or was it programs, cd local, maybe there, cd programs, cd python, and change directory to Python 37. If I just type here dir right here, we have the remove.py. So if I just type python.exe remove.py and just type dir once again, we have the test directory created, as you can see right here. So we have the test directory. Let us just check if we can go from here. Yeah, it is right here. Test directory has been created. Of course, it is empty. So we successfully created the directory with our remove.py program. Now we don't want to replace it. Okay, so that is our first library that we actually saw. So right now, let us close this and let us try out with a different library. So there is a library called random. So import random. What this library would basically allow us to do is to pick a random number, random integer value. So let us combine this library with the for loop that we covered before. So for I in range to 5, so we want to specify from that I goes from 1 to 5, we want to print, for example, random.rand integer, which means that we are using from the random library a function called randint, which will basically just pick a random integer from the numbers between 1 and 100, for example. So we can specify it like this. If I just press here enter, you can see that this function right here, or not function, this for loop right here, will print out 5 random numbers that are in the range from 1 to 100. This for I in range 5 basically means that we're going to print 5 numbers, and this print random integer basically prints random numbers, which basically does it 5 times because we are in a for loop. So That is another example of actual library that we can use. Let us also check the output of our command prompt commands using the subprocess library. So import subprocess. Now, of course, if you're not familiar with any of this and you're actually confused while listening to me talking about this, don't worry, we're going to cover all of this in greater detail. Right now, I'm only showing you examples of importing different libraries and using their functions. So there is a function in the subprocess library called checkOutput, which allows us to check the actual output of a certain command being executed from our PC. So for example, if you go to the command prompt, open up your command prompt and type dir, you can see that it actually lists all the files in that current directory, which is this directory right here. So these are all the files in that current directory. What we want to do is we want to get that same output just with our Python. So in order to do that, we can just type here output will be equal to subprocess.check_output, which is a function that we will use from the subprocess library, open and close brackets, and in between the single quotes right here, you need to specify the command that you want to execute, which in our case, since we're on Windows, we want to execute dir. If you're on Linux, make sure to execute ls, because ls lists all the files in the current directory on Linux. Now after it, we need to specify shell equals true, and that is basically it. If you just type here enter, it will execute this, and if we print the output, it will print it rather in a different format, but it will still print the current directory from this program. Now you can also do something else, such for example, you can execute a different command. So let me just do the same thing. We can use cd command. So output will be equal right now to subprocess.check_output. We want to execute cd, and cd basically in Windows will print you the current working directory that you are located in, and in the Linux, if you're using Linux, just type here pwd, which stands for print working directory. Again, shell equals true, and we want to print the output in order to see in which directory is our program. We can see we are currently in the desktop directory, which is true. And right now, subprocess also allows us to, for example, execute different things. So we can actually create a file with this actual program right here, I believe. So let me just check it out. Subprocess.popen, or not popen, we want to use the, we can use popen, I believe. Let me just check out. Or we might actually get the actual access denied as before, but let us just give it a try. It doesn't even matter. Shell equals true. In this window right here, you can see all the things that you can specify for this function, which we really won't specify right now. We don't really care about them at the moment, so let us click here enter, and we successfully did create the test directory. I'm not really sure if it was here. Yeah, it probably wasn't here, but doesn't even matter. We successfully created a file test on our desktop. Now this is not the proper way to actually create files. I will show you later on, once we get to the file section, how you can create, manipulate, write and read from the files. But for now on, that would be about it for this tutorial. Hope you enjoyed this little demonstration of importing different libraries, and I hope I see you in the next tutorial where we will continue coding. So hope you enjoyed it, and I hope I see you in the next lecture. Bye!